Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Hidden Gem podcast here at the Weis Earth Science Museum. I'm Joseph Frederickson, your host, and I'm here with my colleague Scott Schaefer, the collections manager here at the museum. So for this first episode, we'd like to introduce ourselves a little bit, tell you a little bit about the museum, and what we're going to be doing on this podcast every 2 weeks. So as I mentioned, my name is Dr. Joseph Frederickson. I am the director here of the Weis Earth Science Museum. So that means I pretty much run the day-to-day operations as well as take care of all the bigger projects related to the museum. I'm a vertebrate paleontologist, or someone who studies animals that have bones, including dinosaurs, as we all know, but also the little animals that were scurrying at the feet of those dinosaurs. I specialize in animals that were living during the Cretaceous and the Jurassic of the western United States, which is pretty cool. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about my research at some point, but not a whole lot today. A little bit about my education background. I'm from Wisconsin, so we are located right now here at the Weis Earth Science Museum in the Fox Valley, right near Appleton, Wisconsin, which is a pretty beautiful place if you've ever been. Grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, did some schooling in Philadelphia and at the University of Oklahoma before coming back up here to take this job. Scott, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
I can do that. I'm Scott Schaefer. I'm the collections manager here. I grew up in Wisconsin as well. My background is in paleoecology. I have a master's degree that I finished at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and my interests are invertebrate and paleoecology. So I don't study the stuff with the backbones, dinosaurs and things like that. You're looking at large organisms, ecosystem engineers, the big things that people are excited to dig up. I get excited by the complexities of all the little invertebrates, things without backbones in an ocean. So if you look at a coral reef, all the weird little things that look like stone or sponges that don't look alive, that are animals, those are things I'm interested in. How they interact with one another and what happens to them when extinctions happen, how long they last, which groups compete with whom. It's a big picture idea that requires a lot of little details that I think most people are afraid of. People like the dinosaurs. Knowing all the weird little critters in the oceans, that can be overwhelming. But for me, it's exciting.
It's a long way of saying that you like brachiopods.
They are my favorites. So the name of this podcast was Almost Brachia Podcast. It didn't become that, even though I love them, because it's a big word and hard to spell. Nobody would find us. But we have cool brachiopods here. I love what I do. I get to work with the specimens. I get to work on a framework of paleontology with a colleague who has just as much knowledge about a portion of the fossil record that I don't get. So we get to work on the big picture here, work with the specimens, and teach that to others, and I love that.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening right now at the Weis Earth Science Museum. So what is new going on? Well, we've gotten into summer, and we love summer here because not just it's the most beautiful weather that you have in the Appleton area of Wisconsin, where it's actually, you can be outside for more than 5 minutes, but it's also a time where we get to see a lot of people coming in with their families to check out the museum during the week and on weekends, but also gives us a chance to get into the collections and to do some work back there. And you want to tell them a little bit about some of the projects we're working on right at the moment?
Well, because we're not giving as many school groups and we're not preoccupied, we are finally working on some of the last and largest portions of our collections that were in separate storage outside the museum, that we didn't have in our collections proper. We have records of, but weren't cataloged and can't really use. So one collection is the Jim Costeros collection, which is now finally being labeled, cataloged, and worked with, but there's a lot in here.
So what is the Jim Costeros collection primarily made of, and how many pieces are there?
We have a lot of material from the Costeros collection. Some of it has been cataloged already, but what it consists of are a large amount of specimens from the Mazon Creek locality. For those of you who don't know, if you're from north central Illinois, Braidwood, Braceville area, kind of around Joliet, we have fossils that are like these. We'll get a close-up. Trevor will give those a little bit, but this is what's called a nodule. And so these materials, there's a lot of them in Jim's collection. They encase a fossil on the inside from an ecosystem about 300 million years ago in central Illinois. We call it the Pennsylvanian period. So it has a lot of leaves and animals encased in these that are preserved with exquisite detail. So this site's called a Lagerstätten deposit. German word that you use to describe a place that has beyond exceptional preservation. So we have a lot of these. We have bones, and in that one there's a really nice tree fern called Macroneuropterus. We'll talk more about those and the rest of the fossils from the collection in a bit. But beautiful detail on these. And he has a lot of those. We also have mammoth teeth and bones, a lot of fossils from the region, Silurian dolomitic bedrock. So that's marine bedrock around us here that has fossils like trilobites and things, the invertebrates that I'm more familiar with. Large nautiloids, swimming squid stuff. Should have had our stuffy.
I know.
We need our stuffy. We need more props and toys and stuff.
We'll get to that in a future episode.
But there are thousands of pieces. In general, I think the catalog acknowledges something like 10,000, give or take. It's hard because the way the catalog we haven't batched. So it says lots of Maison Creek nodules. And there are.
So one aspect of this collection, why it's so important for us at the Weis Science Museum, is the fact that it's made up of so much stuff from the Midwest, so much stuff from Wisconsin or neighboring states, and that's really a big part of our mission here at the University Museum, is that we really want to contribute to our local knowledge as well as the worldwide knowledge of paleontology, minerals, rocks, crystals, all of that good stuff, including mining history. So we really collect just about everything that has to do with that local story. That doesn't mean that's the only thing we have. We also have fossils from all over the world. We have minerals from all over the world because they help impart, fill out that broader picture, that knowledge, and that story about how everything is tied together in the world, which I think is part of what makes geology so interesting, is that some of the rocks that are forming on the other side of the world could also be forming right here in Wisconsin at a different time.
Yeah, because we work with a museum, we have material culture. It's a lot easier to appeal to people when you have something you can put in their hands. It's more real to them. It's more exciting and fun. I mean, we have fossils you can hold and other things. But we are the mineralogical museum. It's funny, Joe and I are both paleontology backgrounds. Well, I have a master's, not a PhD. So he's PhD paleontologist, researcher. I work with collections at my master's level. And Don, we got to bring Don in one day, also paleontologist, but we're the Mineralogical Museum of Wisconsin. But we know a lot about that too. So come by and see stuff. It makes it cooler. It's what we do.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the events that the museum is going to be a part of very, very soon. And I think the first one that is coming up is actually this Saturday. We are going to be,
That's
we're going
right.
to be at the Green Lake Dinosaur Days in Green Lake, Wisconsin. If you've never been to Green Lake, it is a beautiful town. And this time of year is really where they shine. They have so many people coming up to enjoy the fantastic weather and the water of the lake. And they have a beautiful and really amazing town center. And in that town center, they will actually put on events going on almost every single weekend. And early in June, they usually do what's called Dino Days. And we've participated in this previously, where we bring fossils and we bring other aspects of other artifacts.
It's our museum travel.
Yeah, exactly. For outreach purposes, to teach people about all the cool stuff that they could see at our museum, or also possibly locally if they go out and search some of the rocks nearby Green Lake.
Totally.
You actually have to go through, on the way to Green Lake, you actually pass some pretty nice exposures of dolomite. I don't think there's any fossils in there, but it is at least some nice road cuts, which are pretty cool. By the time you're listening to this, that will be over. And we have another Dinosaur Days that is actually happening in Wild Rose, another town not too far from here. Other than that, I think the summer looks pretty open. It's pretty much just working in the museum. I think we have a rock giveaway going on in July, or a rock sale that we do. And we'll be having a few other of those events here at the Weis Science Museum. So if you hear this and you're nearby, please come by. Check our social media pages, our Facebook or Instagram, and you can see a calendar of events for all of those things that are occurring. All right, so for this podcast, today is going to be a little bit of a shorter podcast, simply just because we wanted to mostly introduce ourselves. But normally, I think what we're going to do in this portion, after we get through kind of the everyday announcements, we'll be talking about what's in the news. The new science that is occurring in the world of geology or the world of paleontology. And you can get our take on what that is from both an invertebrate paleontologist, a vertebrate paleontologist. And if there's something that we want to talk about that is outside of our expertise, we'll bring someone on locally who knows something about those topics. Sometimes these might be controversial things. There's been quite a few of those in paleontology lately, so I look forward to delving into that. And then I think more fun, we want to keep this fairly lighthearted, so we have plans to do everything from power rankings or making lists of some of our favorite pop culture topics in the world of geology and paleontology, as well as maybe a few games.
Ooh. Yeah, we gotta have more entertainment. So far we've been yammering at you, which is fine. We're gonna make it fun and entertaining because you'll want to listen to us, and hopefully you'll learn something too. So we'll put the fun stuff in there so it's not just, this is a rock, it's neat. We teach more than that. And it's cool, you can see it and hold it, so
I think what I want to do is, to end this podcast, I want to talk a little bit about something that is in the collection that you pulled out for everyone to see today, and tie that into a very dynamic area of the world that is currently exploding.
Oh yeah.
So
don't build a picture of in your head of like, hey, see that place? It doesn't work that way.
No.
What we're doing here and what I have is something that relates to me, field work that I've done, and there's some beautiful stuff here. So I mentioned the nodule we have. This is from the Costeris collection, just starting to catalog these. The fossil in here is a paleobotanical specimen, again a tree fern. What's so cool is that these are 300 million years old. We kind of knew the structure. And we have beautiful specimens from Mason Creek, and I just found one in the collections that I really like. It's the same species. It's called Macroneuropterus. Macro is the big one at Mason Creek. This is probably just go by Neuropterus, but this one's pathological. Should have the structure of this leaf, but it's all diverted and unusual from a pathology, and it's also preserved from coal deposits, so it's a petroleum veneer on there. It's green, yellow, it's like when you look at a puddle, it's beautiful. So I just found this back in the collections and still have to catalog it. This is actually from the Sharilla collection. But we'll get close-ups on these because everyone loves plants, but paleobotany is one of the ones that it's kind of a niche field, and I think people should appreciate how beautiful these are. But you don't have to try to visualize it or envision it, because there are tree ferns around today. I love the ancient things that have been around forever. And types of tree ferns, it's called, I had to bring it up. I'm going to look it up so it's not offensive, but it's a tree fern on the big island of Hawaii is a good place to see them. And by the way, Hawaii is what's blowing up. Not all of Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii, but if you want to see these tree ferns, go to Volcanoes National Park, because that is where the eruptions are currently going on.
So yeah, you may have heard that on June 7th, Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes in the entire world and most active on the Hawaiian Islands, erupted for the first time since a few months ago, but really on a large scale. Yeah. It's been relatively quiet. It had gone through about a 30-year period of erupting pretty violently, and then quieted down over the last 5 to 6 years, and it's erupting again. Lucky for everyone in that area, it has really been contained. The eruption is limited to the Halemaumau crater, if I'm saying that right, hopefully. And it's given, scientists in the area, the USGS has given it a red warning, but no homes are currently threatened. There really isn't any danger to people unless you were to, fall in the crater, which we don't
swim in lava, that's bad.
Yeah, so one thing that is kind of interesting is that the last time it erupted on a large scale that actually crested the crater was in 2018 after a large earthquake. And this one actually led to lava spewing down the side, endangered some homes, and it actually created something called lays. Have you heard of lays before?
Is that split in the earth where it just cracks and pools up and out of it?
So lays is actually a combination of lava, haze.
Oh!
And it's actually what happens when lava spews out and basically releases a lot of quartz particles into the air.
That's bad.
Yeah, you don't really want to breathe that in. If you get that on your car, you really don't want to use your windshield wipers because those micro quartz crystals are as strong, as hard as your glass on your car. You just scratch it all up. So it's definitely one of those things where it doesn't seem as dangerous outright as the lava itself, but that lava is moving relatively slow. You can probably get away from it. but might not be able to get away from the lays.
And it could give you pneumono ultra microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. I didn't make that word up. That's actually a real word, I guess, and it's a disease you get in your lungs from tiny glass shards that get embedded in there, and I think it could cause that. I couldn't even write that word out or probably say it again.
Wow.
But if you go there and you want to see it, you can keep caution. This lava's slow. It's thick basalt. It's the glowy, soupy stuff. So it's really cool to see. And if you go there, you got to look for the tree ferns. By the way, the tree ferns that we're talking about, the native name, the indigenous name there is Hapu'u. But its scientific name is Cibotium menziesii. It's really, really cool to see these primitive trees in a landscape where it's bare lava. You're looking at like the beginning of an ecosystem at a primitive time. With other plants aren't there to give you a time of reference. What do you see? Tree ferns. You might as well be 300 million years ago. It's so cool. So if you can get there and see it.
Well, I think that's good for this first episode. I want to thank you for joining us today. We will be back in 2 weeks with our second episode, which will be a little bit longer, include some of those other events. If you have any questions and you want to have those answered by the podcast, please email us at trevorwesm@gmail.com. And you can listen to us and watch us on the platforms including Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.